We got something a little different.
See, now that I know, that's a bear. Bear okay?
Oh, yeah, he's fine.
Oh, waiter!
Johnny Carson interviewed Hollywood's biggest stars, but his wildest guests often arrived covered in fur, feathers, claws, or scales. These unpredictable animals ignored scripts, invaded his personal space, damaged the set, and sometimes left the king of late night genuinely nervous. From a coyote taking over the stage to animals climbing all over Johnny, nothing went as planned. In this countdown, we revisit 15 insane animal moments featuring experts Joan Embery and Jim Fowler, packed with sudden attacks, embarrassing accidents, dangerous encounters, and perfectly timed reactions. 15. Bear Cub. On June 23, 1983, Jim Fowler walked onto the Tonight Show stage carrying a young black bear cub, and Johnny Carson immediately looked unsure about how close he wanted to get. The animal was small, but Johnny knew even a baby bear could be unpredictable. His cautious questions made the audience laugh before the cub had done anything. Fowler calmly insisted the bear was fine, while Johnny watched every movement with the nervous focus of a man expecting trouble. The cub quickly took over the segment. It wandered near Johnny's desk, climbed around the set, and then discovered Ed McMahon's coffee mug. Without hesitation, the bear started drinking from it. Johnny spotted the moment and instantly turned it into a joke, warning that if the cub drank too much of Ed's coffee, it might hibernate for an entire year. The line landed perfectly because Ed's drinks were already a running joke on the show. Fowler then began feeding the cub with a bottle. The little bear rolled onto its back, kicked its paws into the air, and drank as though the studio audience did not exist. Johnny tried to continue the conversation, but the cub kept stealing every glance. When it climbed near the desk, Carson joked like a restaurant customer finding a bit of bear in his soup. Nothing dangerous happened, yet the tension made everything funnier. Johnny never forced the comedy. He simply watched, reacted, and let the cub's innocent behavior create the scene. That balance of caution, timing, and quick jokes turned a simple animal visit into one of Carson's most charming wild moments. The bear cub seemed wild enough, but the next guest was far heavier, far less coordinated, and only one sudden movement away from knocking Johnny off his feet. 14. Baby Bison. When Joan Embery appeared on The Tonight Show with a baby bison, most people expected a calm and adorable animal segment. What they got instead was a glimpse of just how powerful even a young bison could be. From the moment it stepped onto the stage, the animal seemed full of energy. It wagged its tail, shifted its weight constantly, and looked far less interested in sitting still than Joan probably hoped. Johnny Carson immediately noticed that this was not going to be an ordinary interview. At first, the baby bison appeared friendly enough. Joan explained details about the animal while Johnny carefully watched its movements. Then came the bottle feeding. Johnny took part in helping feed the young bison, and for a few moments everything seemed under control. The audience enjoyed watching the animal eagerly drink its milk, while Carson offered his usual playful commentary. But the situation changed the second the bottle started running low. The bison wanted more, much more. As the milk disappeared, the animal became increasingly excited and impatient. It began pushing forward, nudging for the bottle, and swinging its body around with surprising force. Despite being only a baby, it was already large enough to create real challenges for the adults trying to manage it. Johnny quickly found himself stepping backward, while still trying to make jokes. Every movement from the bison created another burst of laughter from the audience. Joan worked to keep the energetic animal under control, but the bison seemed determined to follow the bottle wherever it went. What made the segment so memorable was the contrast. The baby bison looked cute, yet it possessed enough size and strength to nearly overpower everyone around it. Watching Johnny joke his way through the growing chaos turned the entire encounter into classic Carson television. 13. Sloth. When Jim Fowler brought a young sloth onto The Tonight Show in 1985, it seemed like one of the safest animal demonstrations Johnny Carson would ever run into. After all, sloths are kind of famous for moving slowly and spending most of their lives just hanging from trees. Compared to bears, big cats, and reptiles, This furry little creature really didn't look all that threatening. Fowler walked through the animal's habits while Johnny sat there listening, pretty relaxed, with no real sign of the nervous energy that tends to pop up when bigger animals show up on stage. To make it easier, Johnny put on a pair of protective gloves. Then Fowler carefully handed him the sloth and suggested that he let it cling to his jacket. At first, everything matched the script, so to speak. The sloth moved at its usual pace, wrapped its arms around Johnny, and looked entirely calm. The audience stayed quiet. Carson smiled and held the animal like nothing at all was happening. No visible unease. But then, something changed. When the sloth finally settled in, Johnny sort of clocked what was happening. Its long claws were doing more than just holding onto his jacket. They were literally pushing straight through the fabric. His face changed almost instantly. That sure-of-itself smile vanished, and in its place came this growing, kind of worried look, like his mind was trying to catch up a second too late. Fowler was telling him, pretty calmly, that everything was okay, and Johnny nodded like he believed it, but Carson could feel it plainly. The claws were digging farther through his clothing, not gently either. The crowd got the vibe right away. Anytime Johnny tried to stay steady, the whole thing looked even funnier. He moved with this careful restraint, avoiding sudden jerks, because he really didn't want to startle the animal. Meanwhile, he started thinking, real quietly, about the cleanest way to get free, without harming the sloth or ruining his suit. After that, it was basically Carson comedy, for sure. He didn't flip out on the outside, but his expression did all the talking. The contrast between the supposedly harmless sloth and Johnny's worsening discomfort made one of those standout animal moments, the kind people bring up later. Turns out sometimes the slowest guest makes the biggest reaction. 12. Chimpanzee, Zippy. When animal handler Jack Rinsky brought Zippy the chimpanzee onto The Tonight Show, it quickly became clear that this was not an ordinary animal appearance. Unlike many of the unpredictable guests that wandered across Johnny Carson's stage, Zippy arrived with a polished routine and the confidence of a seasoned performer. From the moment he appeared, the audience could tell they were watching a true showman. Zippy immediately began demonstrating a series of human-like skills that left the crowd amazed. He tied his shoelaces, then untied them with surprising precision. He handled objects with remarkable control and even operated a lighter, displaying a level of coordination that seemed almost unbelievable. Each trick flowed smoothly into the next, making the performance feel less like an animal demonstration and more like a comedy act. What made the segment especially memorable was Zippy's timing. He seemed to know exactly when to pause, when to perform, and when to draw attention to himself. Every action generated laughter and applause from the audience. Johnny wisely avoided competing with the chimp for attention. Instead, he reacted to the performance, delivering quick remarks and letting Zippy remain the star of the segment. That approach worked perfectly. The combination of Zippy's unusual talents and Carson's effortless reactions created one of the most entertaining animal appearances in Tonight Show history, proving that sometimes the best guest on television did not need to say a single word. 11. The Alligator and Crocodile Showdown. In July 1980, Jim Fowler showed up on The Tonight Show with two guests that kind of changed everything right away. The mood in the studio, an alligator and a crocodile. Unlike those more fuzzy creatures that usually rolled through the program, these reptiles had this clear feeling of risk. The second they came out onto the stage, the crowd got more awake, like instantly. And Johnny Carson seemed way less into it, you could tell. Fowler started talking through how the two animals differ, sort of breaking down the details in looks, habits, and natural surroundings. Sure, it was an educational demo, but a lot of the audience just couldn't stop watching the reptiles. Each small motion, it felt like it had weight. A turn of the head, a small shift in the tail, or even a quick repositioning was enough to set off nervous laughter all around the studio. Yeah, Johnny held back a respectful distance for most of that segment. While Fowler handled the reptiles with a calm sort of steadiness, Carson seemed to lean on humor, like he needed a little help dealing with his very obvious uneasiness. His expressions, honestly, did more than his words most times. Every time one of the animals shifted, Johnny would subtly lean back or adjust his stance, and somehow It kept turning into laughs, like clockwork. What really made the segment stick with people wasn't some huge, dramatic event. It was more like the contrast between Fowler's confidence and Carson's careful caution. The reptiles didn't have to perform much, just being there, the whole presence alone was enough. Johnny's running commentary plus that visible discomfort kinda turned what should have been a straightforward wildlife lesson into one of the show's funniest reptile run-ins. 10. Water Buffalo, Waldo. Few animals ever appeared on The Tonight Show that could match the sheer size of Waldo the water buffalo. The moment the enormous animal entered the stage, it became one of the largest and most intimidating guests Johnny Carson had ever encountered. Waldo reportedly weighed close to 2,000 pounds, and his presence immediately transformed a normal interview segment into something that felt far more unpredictable. As handlers carefully guided the buffalo into position, Johnny could not hide his amazement. The audience laughed as he stared at the giant animal and tried to imagine what could possibly happen next. Waldo stood calmly, but his size alone was enough to create tension. One unexpected movement from an animal that large could completely change the situation. Then came the moment that made the segment famous. Johnny was encouraged to climb onto Waldo's back. The audience loved the idea. Johnny looked far less enthusiastic. Still, he carefully mounted the buffalo while delivering nervous jokes and playful remarks. His smile suggested confidence, but his body language told a different story. Once seated on top of the massive animal, Carson appeared unsure about what Waldo might do next. Every shift in the buffalo's posture drew laughs and reactions from the crowd. The stunt itself was simple, yet the tension made it memorable. What viewers remembered most was Johnny's reaction. His cautious humor, combined with Waldo's overwhelming size, turned an ordinary animal demonstration into a classic Tonight Show moment. 9. The baby elephant. When Joan Embery introduced a baby elephant to The Tonight Show, the audience immediately fell in love with the animal. It was young, curious, and undeniably adorable. Yet despite its age, the elephant already possessed impressive size and strength. What looked like a harmless guest could easily dominate the entire stage simply because of its weight and power. As Joan explained facts about the animal, the elephant seemed far more interested in exploring its surroundings. Its trunk moved constantly, reaching toward anything that caught its attention. Microphones, furniture, stage equipment, and even Johnny Carson himself became potential objects of investigation.
The thing is that usually she's all dressed up in all her finery and her costumes, but tonight she's just going to be a little elephant. She's just going to kind of do her own thing.
Every time the trunk stretched in a new direction, the audience reacted with anticipation. Johnny tried to continue the interview, but keeping an eye on the elephant quickly became part of the challenge. Unlike smaller animals that could be held or guided more easily, the elephant moved wherever its curiosity led it. Carson watched carefully, never quite sure what the animal would decide to inspect next. The contrast between Johnny and the elephant created much of the comedy. Though still a baby, the elephant was already large enough to make Carson seem small by comparison. Each step brought it closer to the desk and studio equipment, creating a sense of suspense throughout the segment. Nothing dramatic needed to happen for the appearance to succeed. The elephant's natural curiosity, combined with Johnny's cautious reactions, generated plenty of laughs. It was a perfect example of how an animal's personality could completely shape a Tonight Show segment. 8. Laughing Mynah Bird, Howard. When Joan Embery appeared on The Tonight Show with a mynah bird named Howard, nobody expected the small bird to completely take over the interview. Howard may not have looked particularly impressive at first glance, but he possessed a talent that immediately captured the audience. Unlike most animals that relied on unpredictable behavior for laughs, Howard generated comedy simply by opening his beak. The bird began by greeting everyone with a friendly hello, before proudly announcing, "My name is Howard." The audience loved it. Then Howard showed off even more skills. He meowed like a cat, copied familiar sounds, and seemed eager to respond whenever someone spoke. Every successful imitation brought another round of laughter and applause. The real comedy started when Johnny Carson attempted to conduct the interview. Each time Johnny tried to speak, Howard interrupted with loud bursts of laughter. The timing was almost unbelievable. It felt as though the bird understood exactly when to cut off the host. Carson would begin a sentence, and Howard would laugh. Johnny would try again, and Howard would laugh even louder. Soon, Carson realized the battle was lost. Rather than fight for attention, he leaned into the moment and allowed Howard to become the star. Between questions, Johnny rewarded the bird with grapes, while delivering quick reactions that only made the audience laugh harder. By the end of the segment, Howard had accomplished something few guests ever managed. He completely stole the spotlight from one of television's greatest hosts and turned a simple animal appearance into an unforgettable Tonight Show classic. Howard only needed his voice to take over the show. The animals coming next used their hands, feet, and surprising strength to turn Johnny himself into part of the act. 7. The baby orangutans. On June 26, 1986, Joan Embery brought 2 baby orangutans onto The Tonight Show, and within seconds it became clear that Johnny Carson was no longer in charge of the segment. The young apes arrived full of curiosity and energy, showing far more interest in exploring the stage than participating in a television appearance. From the moment they were introduced, they treated the studio like their personal playground. One orangutan quickly made its way toward Johnny and climbed directly onto his shoulders. The audience erupted with laughter as Carson tried to remain calm while carrying an unexpected passenger. Meanwhile, the second orangutan was just as busy. It tugged at clothing, grabbed nearby objects, and investigated anything within reach. Furniture, microphones, and desk items suddenly became toys. Johnny attempted to continue the interview, but keeping a straight face became nearly impossible. Every question was interrupted by another climb, another grab, or another unexpected movement. The orangutans seemed determined to turn Carson into part of the act. Rather than resist the chaos, Johnny embraced it. He delivered quick one-liners and reacted to whatever happened next, allowing the audience to enjoy every unpredictable moment. His willingness to laugh at the situation only made the segment funnier. What made the appearance so memorable was the complete lack of control. The orangutans did exactly what they wanted, and Johnny simply adapted. The result was pure comedy and one of the most beloved animal segments in Tonight Show history. 6. Wild Coyote. One of the earliest unforgettable animal moments on The Tonight Show came when Jim Fowler introduced a wild coyote to Johnny Carson and the audience. At first, everything appeared completely under control. Fowler calmly discussed the animal's behavior and habitat while assuring Johnny that the coyote had been behaving well. Carson listened carefully, though he never seemed entirely convinced that trusting a wild predator was a great idea. For a while, the demonstration went smoothly. The coyote remained calm as Fowler explained its natural instincts and characteristics. Then the animal became interested in an object and decided it had no intention of giving it back. Attempts to move the coyote or persuade it to cooperate produced little success. The animal simply stood its ground. Johnny immediately recognized the situation and delivered one of his funniest reactions. Rather than encouraging anyone to challenge the coyote, he suggested that Fowler should just give the animal whatever it wanted. The audience burst into laughter because the advice sounded surprisingly reasonable under the circumstances. Then things became even more memorable. In the middle of the segment, the coyote suddenly relieved itself right on the stage. The studio audience exploded with laughter, while Johnny, Ed McMahon, and Fowler struggled to maintain their composure. No one could have planned it. And that made it even funnier. What started as a routine wildlife demonstration quickly became a perfect example of live television at its most unpredictable. The coyote ignored expectations, created complete chaos, and left everyone on stage reacting in real time. It remains one of the show's classic animal mishaps. 5. Baby wild horse, Przewalski's horse. When Joan Embery introduced a young Przewalski's horse to The Tonight Show, she explained that the animal represented one of the oldest surviving wild horse lineages in the world. It was an important conservation success story and a rare opportunity for viewers to see an animal connected to ancient horse populations. Unfortunately for Joan, the horse seemed completely uninterested in making television history. From the moment it stepped onto the stage, the young horse made its feelings clear. It did not want to stand still. It tugged against its lead, shook its head repeatedly, and constantly searched for a way to leave. While Joan attempted to share facts about the species, the horse focused entirely on escaping what was probably a very strange environment. The audience quickly found the animal's stubborn behavior amusing. Every attempt to guide it into position seemed to create another challenge. The horse would settle briefly, then immediately start moving again. Its reluctance became the comedy. Johnny Carson watched the situation unfold from a safe distance. While he admired the animal, he clearly had no desire to stand directly in front of an irritated horse. He joked about its size, its restless personality, and its obvious lack of enthusiasm for appearing on television. What made the segment memorable was how relatable the horse seemed. Unlike many trained animal performers, this young Przewalski's horse simply wanted to be somewhere else. Its repeated attempts to leave created a steady stream of laughs and gave Johnny plenty of opportunities for quick jokes. Sometimes refusal can be just as entertaining as cooperation. 4. The Baby Gorilla. On June 13, 1984, Joan Embery returned to The Tonight Show with a guest that immediately captured everyone's attention: an 18-month-old gorilla. While still young, the ape already displayed remarkable strength and confidence. The moment it arrived on stage, it became obvious that this would not be a quiet or predictable interview. Joan attempted to guide the gorilla while explaining facts about the species, but the young ape had its own agenda. Instead of focusing on the demonstration, it became fascinated by everything around it: the set, the furniture, the equipment, and especially Johnny Carson, all seemed far more interesting than standing still for television. The gorilla wandered where it wanted, frequently ignoring directions. What surprised many viewers was the animal's strength. Even at a young age, it was powerful enough to make handlers stay alert. Every movement carried a sense of unpredictability. The audience laughed as the gorilla explored its surroundings with endless curiosity, never appearing interested in cooperating. Johnny handled the situation the way he always did. Rather than panic or force control, he remained calm and reacted to whatever happened next. His composed delivery contrasted perfectly with the gorilla's energetic behavior. While the ape moved around the stage, Carson watched carefully and slipped in jokes whenever opportunities appeared. That balance created the comedy. The gorilla brought excitement and uncertainty. Johnny brought timing and restraint. Together, they produced one of the most entertaining animal segments of the era. It was another reminder that on The Tonight Show, the funniest moments often came from animals doing exactly what they wanted. 3. Rooster, Baby. One of the most famous animal appearances in Tonight Show history came courtesy of a rooster named Baby. During a March 1978 visit, Donna Pyle brought the celebrated bird from Iowa onto Johnny Carson's stage.
She has her pet rooster, Baby, who's done a radio commercial and has won 2 international crowing contests in Waterloo, Iowa. And she is here tonight with her pet rooster. So would you welcome Donna Pyle?
This was no ordinary farm animal. Baby had earned recognition by winning crowing competitions and had even appeared in radio commercials. With a resume like that, the audience expected a memorable performance. Donna proudly placed the rooster on Johnny's desk and prepared to demonstrate why Baby had become such a local celebrity. The plan seemed simple. The rooster would crow, the audience would applaud, and everyone would move on. But live television has a way of ignoring plans. When encouraged to crow, Baby showed little interest in cooperating. Instead, the rooster remained quiet and unexpectedly created a much different kind of moment. Right there on Johnny's desk, the bird left an unwanted mess in full view of the audience. The studio immediately erupted with laughter. Rather than become embarrassed or flustered, Carson did what he always did best. He transformed the accident into comedy. His quick reactions and perfectly timed remarks turned an awkward situation into one of the funniest exchanges of the night. The more unexpected the moment became, the funnier Johnny's response was. What makes the story even more remarkable is that the rooster was remembered long after the appearance ended. Years later, after learning that Baby had died, Carson paid tribute to the bird on air. That rare acknowledgement showed just how unforgettable this unusual guest had become in Tonight Show history. 2. Laughing Parrot, Lolita. When wildlife expert Suni Black appeared on The Tonight Show with a collection of animals, it seemed like the audience would be treated to a variety of interesting demonstrations. There were several creatures to showcase, each with its own unique traits. Yet, Within minutes, one animal completely stole the spotlight. An Amazon parrot named Lolita became the undisputed star of the evening. At first, Lolita appeared charming and friendly. She greeted everyone with a cheerful hello and immediately drew attention with her ability to mimic sounds. The parrot meowed like a cat, barked like a dog, and responded to questions with remarkable confidence. The audience loved every second of it. Then came the laughter. Lolita suddenly began producing loud bursts of laughter that sounded uncannily human. Even more impressive was the timing. Each time Johnny Carson started speaking or tried to set up a joke, the parrot seemed to interrupt at exactly the right moment. It felt less like random mimicry and more like a veteran comedian stealing punchlines. The interruptions became increasingly funny as the segment continued. Johnny would begin a sentence, and Lolita would laugh. He would try again, and the bird would laugh even louder. Before long, Carson, the audience, and the celebrity guests sharing the stage were struggling to keep themselves together. By the end of the appearance, Lolita had achieved something very few guests ever managed. She completely hijacked the segment and turned it into her own comedy routine. The result was one of the funniest and most memorable animal moments in Tonight Show history. Lolita could interrupt a punchline, but the final animal needed no words at all. One look, one strange movement, and one invasion of Johnny's space were enough to create pure chaos. 1. Emu. Taking the top spot is an animal that did not need tricks, special training, or dramatic stunts to create comedy. It simply had to exist. When Joan Embery brought a towering emu onto The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson's reaction was immediate. The bird's unusual appearance, long neck, and prehistoric look caught him completely off guard. One glance was enough to generate laughter from the audience. The emu wasted no time making itself comfortable. Rather than standing politely beside its handler, it began exploring the stage with endless curiosity. It wandered toward Johnny, examined Ed McMahon, inspected the microphones, and investigated anything else within reach. The bird seemed especially interested in Carson, repeatedly moving its head closer and closer to his face. Every time the emu approached, Johnny leaned back slightly while trying to continue the conversation. The audience loved watching him react. There was no panic, just a growing sense of uncertainty about what the bird might do next. The emu's complete disregard for personal space became the running joke of the segment. Carson responded with a steady stream of observations about the bird's appearance. He joked about its tiny wings, questioned how such a creature could ever hope to fly, and compared its awkward features to something from another era. None of the jokes felt forced because the emu kept providing fresh material simply by being itself. What elevated the moment beyond a simple animal demonstration was the chemistry between the bird and the host. The emu never seemed aggressive or frightened. Instead, it behaved like an overly curious visitor that had wandered into the studio and decided to inspect everything personally. Each unexpected movement forced Carson to improvise, showcasing the quick wit that made him a late-night legend. The more the bird ignored the planned presentation, the funnier the segment became. Even decades later, clips of the appearance remain popular because they capture Carson at his absolute best. There were no rehearsed punchlines, no elaborate setups, and no scripted payoffs. The comedy emerged naturally from the interaction between a bewildered host and a bird that refused to follow the rules. That combination of unpredictability and perfect comic timing helped cement the emu's place as perhaps the most memorable animal ever to walk onto the Tonight Show stage. That is what made the segment unforgettable. The emu created the chaos, and Johnny reacted in real time. His timing, expressions, and ability to find humor in every unexpected movement turned a wandering bird into one of the greatest animal guests in Tonight Show history. Johnny Carson never needed animals to follow directions. Their refusal to cooperate was exactly what made these moments so funny. Which animal moment shocked you the most? Share your answer in the comments, like the video, and subscribe for more unforgettable stories from classic television. Then watch the next video shown on the screen for even more wild moments that no producer could have planned.